The Drake class at the turn of the 19th to the 20th centuries had been the last of what you might term the traditionally laid out British armoured cruisers, with a pair of single 9.2-inch guns and a 6-inch secondary battery. After the misstep of the Monmouth class, a return to a larger main battery started with the Devonshires, albeit only at 7.5-inch, before finding its way back to the newer 9.2-inch with the Duke of Edinburgh's and Warriors. However, these two designs also showed a trend in seeking an expanded main battery. The Dukes went in for 6 heavy guns, albeit only 4 of them could fire on the broadside. The Warriors retained this primary battery layout but ditched the 6-inch secondaries entirely and fitted 4 single 7.5-inch guns instead. However, a 2-gun secondary broadside was clearly just a little silly, and paying for 6 heavy 9.2-inch guns but only getting a 4-gun broadside out of those was also not great. With the next class, the Minotaurs, things therefore changed again. These would turn out to be the last British armoured cruisers in the classic sense, and as they were built at the time of the Anglo-German naval arms race heating up, and contemporary with the design of the semi-dreadnought Lord Nelson class battleships, they were about 2,000 tons larger than their predecessors, and in many ways could be termed semi-dreadnought armoured cruisers, a link to the Invincible class dreadnought armoured cruisers that were to follow. This was largely down to the new layout of the guns. Although the class only carried 4 9.2-inch guns as the main battery, these were located in a pair of twin turrets, one fore and one aft, which retained the 4-gun broadside but eliminated the weight of 2 additional single guns. This, and the extra displacement, meant that the secondary battery was made up of no less than 10 single 7.5-inch guns, 5 per side, each in their own turret. A tertiary anti-torpedo boat battery of 16 single 3-inch guns was split into 4 groups, 2 clusters of 4 guns on each of the minimal fore and aft superstructures, and the remaining 8 mounted atop the 8 forwardmost 7.5-inch turrets. There were also 5 single submerged torpedo tubes, 2 per side and 1 on the stern. Armour was complex with so many turrets. The main belt was 6-inch thick amidships, stepping down to 4-inch and then 3-inch forward and 3-inch aft, with the whole waterline thus protected. The turrets were all protected by 8-inch thick faceplates, with 7-inch sides for the 9.2-inch turrets and 6-inch sides for the 7.5-inch turrets. The barbettes were also 7 inches thick across the board. The protected deck layout was 1.5 to 2 inches thick, and some additional pointless weight could be found in a 10-inch thick conning tower, whilst some inventive and less useless armour could be found in the engine room, where the vertical triple expansion engines had their own armour plating, which was up to a couple of inches thick. Speaking of vertical triple expansion engines, 2 of them powered the 14,600-ton ships through the water at between 22.5 and 23 knots, depending on exactly which ship in the class, courtesy of 27,000 indicated horsepower coming from the coal-fired boilers and driving 2 screws. Thanks to the main and secondary guns all being 50 calibers in length, the ships drew some criticism as it seemed that their secondary guns were spaced needlessly far apart, with room for 2 turrets to face each other if you were careful with the gun barrels, and perhaps there's a degree of merit to this, but clustering them up to add another gun would have increased weight still further, although the prospect of 3 twin turrets on either side, or perhaps 3 singles and 2 twins on the centre line, has a degree of appeal. In any case, 4 ships were planned: Minotaur, Shannon, Defence and Orion, but the last was never ordered and the name ended up going to a battleship. The first 3 were laid down in early 1905, launched over 1906 and 1907, and commissioned in spring 1908 for the first 2 and early 1909 for Defence. At first stationed with the home fleet, the 3 were dispersed overseas as the first battle cruisers came online, with World War I finding Minotaur on the China station and Defence in the Mediterranean, with Shannon at home. Defence had the worst luck of the class, being part of the squadron that almost intercepted Goeben, but didn't, then was almost assigned to Admiral Craddock's squadron, but was ordered there just too late, albeit the power of the class, at least in German eyes, was shown in the fact that Admiral von Spee was just as worried about Defence showing up at Coronel as he was about Canopus. But all 3 ships were soon recalled to the Grand Fleet, serving as cruiser squadron flagships. Shannon and Minotaur led the 2nd and 7th Cruiser Squadrons, but by the Battle of Jutland these had been combined into the 2nd Cruiser Squadron. Both vessels ended up being deployed on the unengaged side of the Grand Fleet and never fired their guns. Defence, in her continuing run of bad luck, was leading the 1st Cruiser Squadron on the other side of the Grand Fleet when Admiral Arbuthnot decided to charge in to finish off the crippled Wiesbaden in the middle of the battle. Hit repeatedly at close range by German capital ships, Defence exploded and sank with all hands. Although serving through the rest of the war, Shannon and Minotaur saw no further active combat and were decommissioned in 1919 and then sold for scrap the following year.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.